Hello and welcome to this edition of the Inspiring Women series. Today I have a very interesting panel. First up, we have Enia Group Manager for Client Services, who's based out of Bentonville in the USA. A Fulbright scholar with a master's from Purdue and a BS in computer science, she has developed her career in consumer goods, retail, and technology industries. Prior to Infosys, she worked for IBM and BAT, leading teams and delivering major cross-functional initiatives. Welcome, Enia, to today's session. Next up, we have Lara Salamano. Lara is the Associate Vice President and Senior Digital Strategist, and she's based out of Rhode Island in the USA. She has over 2 decades of experience as a brand strategist and a marketing leader. At Infosys, Lara leads the Providence Design and Innovation Hub, a role in which she manages operations, business development, community and government relations, as well as college and university partnerships. Prior to Infosys, she was the Chief Marketing Officer of the state of Rhode Island. Prior to that, she has spent much of her time at Viacom and MTV Networks, leading partner marketing across multiple brands. Welcome, Lara. And finally, of course, we have Ranjana Joshi. Ranjana is the HR business leader based out of Dallas, USA. She has been with Infosys for nearly 2 decades in a variety of HR roles. In her current role, she oversees HR for North America, and the role sees her interacting with various employees, prospective employees, individual, internal leaders, clients, and ecosystem partners. Ranjana has a master's in business administration, loves traveling and watching movies with family. Welcome, Ranjana. So, Enia, Lara, and Ranjana, it's a pleasure to have all 3 of you. Let me begin with you, Enia. Brazil to USA, a Fulbright scholarship, working with IBM, BAT, and now Infosys. What's your story? What's been your career highlights? And more importantly, what have been your reflections that you'd like to share about what it takes to be successful in an industry like ours?
I think if I can summarize my story, it's really one of resilience. I've always chosen paths that were unknown to me and somewhat made me uncomfortable and sometimes very uncomfortable. And this has always fascinated me because it allowed me to learn things that I didn't know and really get exposure to diverse skills, cultures, and really just opportunities. So I have moved internationally a few times. Even in Brazil, I moved to different series, probably by now about between 16 to 20 times is how many times I've moved, depending on how I count, and visited 30 countries. And the interesting part of all that is I've done that raising my daughter alone. So I didn't really have the financial or emotional support that most of us have in being able to count with that partnership. And I did have a very supportive network, and I've always made sure that I seek that out. And that I have that with my parents, I have that with my daughter, great friends and relationships and mentors that I've built. Has it been difficult? Yes. And I always say that I kind of had 3 jobs, the one that men do and the 2 jobs that women always have to take on. And as I started in my journey for the corporate world, I didn't have any idea on how that worked. My family has an academia background. My father's a physicist, a researcher, PhD in Princeton, all of that. And I didn't have any background, or neither did my family in corporate. So I took the opportunity when I got a Fulbright scholarship to choose a school that I could build an international network, and that's why I chose Purdue. And since that experience, I started in the corporate world, always with stretch assignments. I've had the opportunity to always step into roles that I was not ready for, and that I could learn, and I had the potential, and I delivered in that potential. And only later on in life, I realized that that's not the story for most women. But that way, that is what I believe is important, is that sense of curiosity, that sense of how do you learn a new skill? How do you learn a new industry? How do you learn a new culture? And how do you bring all of that together? So I think curiosity, when I'm asked, what is my secret sauce? I say it's my curiosity, because you always have to be learning. And it's a variety of skill, whether it's technical, leadership, what have you. And the other learning is really on the support network. I think that's absolutely critical for starting a career and being successful. One skill that I have found to be extremely helpful is to learn how to negotiate, and that was important early on in my career, and till this date, even more now. But how do you communicate? How do you negotiate? Even in technology, you will always have to communicate with your clients, with your team members, whether it's a project that's not going well, or whether it's a solution that you want to suggest. So communication and negotiation are crucial skills. And going back to my first point, I'll close it with resilience. You have to be resilient. There will be problems, there will be failures, and you'll have to learn how to pick up the pieces, learn and continue.
If I could just follow up on that, there are a lot of people, especially young women, beginning their careers. If you were to look at some, providing them some career advice, what would you advise women beginning their careers?
I think one important advice is really ignore the stereotypes. People envision that there's this specific type of person who will get in the industry or get into leadership positions, and just forget everything that is set up as a stereotype out there. There are hundreds of career paths in the technology field. It's almost like a build your own book of adventure. Explore the different technologies, explore the different paths. There will be one for you. The other one is, as I said before, just really focus on that support network. I can't stress that enough. That will be key for your success, not only in technology, but in any career for that matter. And that's usually, and a lot of times, overlooked by a lot of young women. And start building that early, because that will be a differentiator in how you're able to learn and advance. Be on the driver's seat of your career development. Advocate for yourself. Don't be intimidated. We tend to be reluctant in putting ourselves forward and getting tagged in a way that might be perceived not positively. But men are not tagged that way. So really, don't be intimidated, and seek out your own development and ask for what you want. Teach yourself. Be always on the learning. Find the niche that you like, and as your career evolves, find other skills that you need to acquire, and make sure that you factor in every day some time for learning. And one thing that I'd like to always tell young professionals and young women is ask for feedback. And feedback really is a gift that somebody's giving you. And what is it that you need to do to change if you believe that that's appropriate? And most importantly, follow good people. Follow good leaders. Look for organizations that value and that have inspired leaders, that value people, and that you admire.
Thank you very much, Enia. Lara, if I can bring you in here, you began your career with Hanna-Barbera cartoons. So cartoons, marketing people, platform, events, and even a state to running digital strategy. You've quite a tale to share. What have been your career highlights, and what do you think takes to become successful in our industry?
I have always taken risks, and I've taken risks because I love the challenge of them. When I was in college, a friend said, let's go abroad for a semester. And I was honestly a little nervous to go that far. And I did. And it opened my eyes to travel, to new people, to new challenges, to new opportunities. And that is when I thought, I'm never going to say no. If I have an opportunity, I'm going to take it, because I will regret not taking it versus taking the chance. So it sent me out to LA when I was young, and I worked for Hanna-Barbera cartoons, and I had the opportunity to sit with Mr. Hanna, Mr. Barbera every day. And these are Emmy Award-winning people who just had such wisdom and kindness and were wonderful leaders. So they started me in my career and as a leader. And I do think leadership is one of the most important things that we do in any job. And I'm lucky to be a leader. And so that drove me. Then I moved to New York because, again, and I was nervous. I was scared. I went alone to New York City. I knew someone there. I lived there for then 15 years. I met my husband. I met my best friends. And again, I opened myself to opportunities. And then taking the chief marketing officer for the state, that was, again, a very scary time. The governor had made a pretty visible error in marketing, and I thought I can take this challenge on. And I actually have a note stuck to my board from the local newspaper saying what a great job I did, and it was a hornet's nest. So I do think take chances, look for opportunities. I always wanted to have choices in my life, and that is what made me do that. Forever, even coming to Infosys, I do not have a tech background. I was starting a new hub for the Design Innovation Center. This had not been done before. And it has been a challenge. It's been a huge challenge and such an opportunity. I've gotten to know so many people, and we are really making this sing. And I'm so proud every day of the team I have. And honestly, it's 90% women, so that's very cool to lead a bunch of young, strong females who are super creative and so smart. But it's really been such an adventure and so amazing. And I'll say one of the things that I think is most important are relationships. I've built relationships throughout my career. I build relationships with my subordinates, my peers. And you also talked about having your people and finding them and finding the right people and following them. And I think that is incredibly valuable. You need to have feedback from peers, from leaders. It is true. It helps to guide you. And I can certainly lean on my relationships frontwards, backwards, and sideways. And that has opened up so many opportunities for me.
As a follow-up, you've been a manager, you've been a leader, you've seen a lot of folks traverse their career through stages. If I could ask you, what would be your advice to women who are in the middle stages of their career?
I would say be true to yourself. I think, again, we as women, we question ourselves so much. I was thinking about my son versus my daughter the other day, and I thought he just goes about life. He makes a mistake and he just keeps on rolling. And I think we're so critical of ourselves. And I really would say, try not to be, try to live in the moment. Again, there's probably no mistake you're going to make that you can't reverse on. So it's better to try, better to move forward, and be very true to yourself. I do feel it's really important for me to look in the mirror every night before I go to bed and say, was I a good person? Was I kind? Was I true to myself? Did I make, the best decisions I could? And I think that is really critical. And I think in the long run, you will be supported.
Ranjana, if I could bring you in here. Mysore to Dallas, HR executive to HR head, individual contributor to organization leaders. You've seen quite a bit. You've also moved around the world quite a bit. What are your career highlights? And what, according to you, is the secret sauce of being successful in an industry like ours?
So two things really, hard work and being courageous. I used to always think that it's such a compulsion, right? Because there was no substitute to hard work, and that was really a focus. And given the situation we were in, and whether it was financially or the emotional support, there was again no choice but to be courageous, right? To really define that journey for yourself, and really think about who you want to be and what you want to be as you grow up. One, of course, I thank my mother for the good education, and I also thank my mother-in-law because she's the one who made my career. Also, there was a time in my life, fairly early in my career, when we had to make this decision between me and my husband in terms of, who will take a step back in the career, because there were some personal priorities that we had to really focus on. And I think at that moment, I took the courage to say that, look, given where we stand, one of us have to make this decision. One of us have to go slow. But, given a choice, I really don't want to compromise. I really want to take that step ahead. Hopefully, I will not regret, and hopefully, I will do well. But I really want to take that chance. And today, when I look back, I think taking that step at that point in my career, I think has really made all the difference.
You've been an HR leader. You've seen a lot of successes and a lot of challenges and that leaders face. What would be your advice to women leaders as they navigate the leadership phases of their career?
I think it's really about overcoming your own insecurities. It's about not being extremely self-critical. I think, we really are so obsessed with wanting everything to be perfect, wanting to make sure that we have completely laid out the plan before even jumping into taking any action, and I think that's something that we should let go and, really look at, maybe take it as it comes.
Thank you, Ranjana. What, according to you, is the most underrated leadership or management skill? Enia?
Active listening.
Respect.
Trust.
Must-have habit, cultivate better time management. Ranjana?
I would say learning to say no.
Planning.
Establishing limits.
Finally, you deal with disappointment by fill in the blank. Lara?
Cleaning.
Going on long hikes and meditating.
Binge watching.
So, Lara, you've had a very diverse career. And I'm sure you've interacted with a lot of women as well as a lot of leaders and managers too. While you've traversed this journey, what are some of the challenges that you've seen women face at the workplace? And what is your recommendation or suggestion to how they could help overcome those?
When I started my career at Viacom, believe it or not, it was mostly women. A female president. I had a female leader in my group. I reported to females my entire 15-year career there. So it was sort of shocking when I had my first male boss. And I think we all know that women are underpaid compared to our male companions. And this is not right, because we're putting in as much time, as much energy, as much leadership. But honestly, we do. We really, really need to hire more females in the tech industry. There is something like 5 or 6% of our leadership is female. That's really low. It's very low in an industry. I go into many meetings with clients as well as internal, where I'm one of the few females. So this is really hard. It's definitely a huge challenge. And I think we just have to keep our foot on the pedal and just keep working to hire more females. And you just don't want the same person sitting at the table. Where our audiences, our clients, they're not the same. They are a very diverse community, and we need to reflect that in our seats.
And if I could bring you in here, what would be your recommendation for other women leaders, right? How can women leaders in organization help other women come up and tackle some of these challenges?
I think one important thing is, how do we, as a leader, right, how do we amplify women's voice would be number one. It's interesting because if you get into a meeting and you watch your coworkers, you will see that most men will sit in the front, in the center, power positions, and most women will gravitate into the corners. of the room. And you will also experience that women are usually more interrupted by men and by women, and a lot of times have a hard time speaking up. So if you are in one of those meetings, right, make sure you intervene and say, I would like to listen to Lara, to Joanne, to whoever other woman is in the room. So make those interventions. If your woman colleague gets interrupted, say, I'd like to listen to her perspective. I think that's one way that we can support other women. Another is to give recognition and encouragement, because that really builds up confidence, and confidence is key to be successful. So make sure that you are recognizing ideas, accomplishments of other women. There's another one that I find interesting is on I call it the likability penalty, because one similar trait, if observed in a man, they're a go-getter, but a woman will be bossy. And so how do you challenge those stereotypes? And when you hear somebody calling a woman bossy or difficult, ask why. And ask a question, would you have felt the same if it was a man doing that? And the likelihood is that the answer would be no. Probably the woman is just doing her job. And one of the points that I mentioned earlier, I will reinforce here, give feedback. Women a lot of times don't get enough feedback. There's sort of a fear that there will be an emotional reaction. But by not giving feedback, you're not really helping. So make sure that you're giving other women, peers, team members, whoever, give feedback. Try to do it in the moment when it's relevant. And lastly, but not least important, provide mentorship. We've said that a few times, how that network is important. Be willing to invest your time in providing mentorship to other women.
It's only fair that I ask you the other side of the equation. If this is how women are helping women, how can men help women? How can men be allies?
I think first thing is, how do you model the right behavior? So we talked about a few examples on, how women will be more interrupted or not allowed to speak. And I've seen this happening not only in internal meetings, and sometimes even in client meetings, and even the clients notice it. So men really need to support and model the right behavior. If you're seeing somebody doing that, call it out, right? Be an example of what good looks like. Sponsor a high potential women. Really help open those doors for women that can advance, that have potential, and may not have that visibility that you have. Communicate fairly, right? Make sure that you're not falling into this is how I engage with my male colleagues. Have the sensitivity on how you communicate also with women, and try not to be positioning with inappropriate comments and things that will just make your colleagues set back. And I think open up like the knowledge that you have, the network that you have, and share that with women in your network.
Ranjana, if I can bring you in here, you've seen this also play out as an HR leader, both from an individual perspective and an organizational perspective. What do you think, as individuals, what would be your recommendation to leaders on what they should do? And organizationally, what have you seen being done, and what are some best practices?
Especially for leaders, and I've seen so many of this, I think is really being conscious of your unconscious bias, right? I think we have quite a distance to cover in terms of having women leaders there at the top. So at the bias that exists today, and I should emphasize that it is unconscious bias, because I think traditionally the thinking is, if there are critical opportunities or if there is a risk in an opportunity, the tendency is, do we really bring women to take up these opportunities, to lead these opportunities, right? I think it's just some natural thinking, or that's your first instinct, whether they'll be able to manage. They somehow, we assume that they are the ones who have a lot of balancing act to do between home and between work, and therefore you tend to also start making decisions on their behalf. You tend to start looking at, maybe I'm supporting this, women by not really putting them into projects like this. I think we really have to move away from that unconscious bias that we have. The first step really is to encourage more and more women to play the critical roles in the organization. I think we really need to bring them to the forefront much more than what we possibly do today. And second is, once you bring them in, I think it's really about how do you back them up, right? And I think that moral support that each of our leaders can extend to the women, and it kind of correlates also with how self-critique they are. And I think it's important, therefore, to really back them up and support them and say that you are there. Should they need, or should anything go wrong, and they will support, but encourage them to take on those roles. I think that is really what we need to focus as an organization in terms of encouraging that behavior. Really showcase leaders who do it very well. In fact, there are many people who've started to do this, and I can see a huge shift in how things happen today as compared to maybe 5 years or 8 years back, right? So I think we need to really celebrate those leaders who kind of exhibit these behaviors. But I would really go back to the fact that there is unconscious bias. I think all of us have to be conscious of that unconscious bias and see how we can overcome that. What steps can we take? And even as part of the leadership development, I think that's something that we really have to reinforce again and again with our leaders.
Thank you very much, Ranjana. So, Ranjana, 2 decades at the organization, obviously something's been going very well. So how has the organization supported you on your career journey?
One of the things that I have loved, and I have sort of seen it play for me again and again, is really the autonomy that this organization gives you, right? I mean, there are just so many opportunities, and it's really for you to you grab it, right? Because whether you look at it in terms of the freedom to operate, the freedom to connect with anybody in the organization, it doesn't matter. I think you can just knock on any door, and third is, you can be a part of any project in this organization. So I personally think that I have really taken advantage of that freedom and that autonomy, and raised my hands and been part of several critical and very exciting projects. Although I have spent 18 to 20 years now in the organization, I keep telling my team and everybody that I interact with that I feel that I have actually changed jobs every 2-3 years, right? Being in the same organization, whether it is the unit that you're working or the projects that you're working or the geography, there are just umpteen opportunities, and I think that is really something that has kept me excited. And I have really worked with some great leaders, who've really advocated for me, backed me, and have given me very constructive and many times unsolicited feedback. And I think I have really tried to work on that feedback, and that's really how my journey has been so fulfilling in this organization.
Fantastic. Now, if I can get all of you in for the last 2 questions very quickly. So, Enia, Lara, and Ranjana, what do you do daily or otherwise to boost your career?
So, two things. I'm always learning, whether it's leadership skill or a new technology or trends in the industry that I work in, retail and consumer goods. I'm always learning something new. And the second one is I keep my network active.
Every day I try to think about at least one thing that is going to move my team forward, move this organization forward, whether it's reaching out to someone in my network that I haven't talked to in a while, whether it's promoting a business, whether it's marketing something.
I think learning through my interactions with the people is really what I do. I'm a keen observer, and so these interactions really help me take away. A lot of takeaways, good, bad, things that I should be doing, things I should not be doing, and I kind of reflect pretty much on a daily basis on this aspect.
Now, if I can get the three of you again to give us one signing off message, and that being, what's the one success mantra that you want to share with our audience out there? Enia?
Stay curious, be bold, and be true to yourself.
Live in the moment and love yourself.
So if there is a problem, there ought to be a solution, right? But if you don't find a solution, you have to realize it's way of life. So just live and enjoy.
Fantastic. Enia, Lara, Ranjana, thank you very much. It was a genuine pleasure having you all. And more importantly, thank you for being so candid and so authentic in sharing your stories. We've got some fantastic insight. Wish all of you continued success.